Douglas Cooling and Heating, serving the Birmingham area for 38 years. 988-3706. That's Douglas.
This is your Weather Extreme video for Thursday, December the 29th. I'm Brian Peters. Thanks for tuning in. We're getting ready to close out the year. Our Skycam this morning from the Alpha Skycam Network, and you can see a little patch of cirrus that moved across Birmingham early this morning, but plenty of sun. Not so sunny at Fayette. In some spots in central Alabama, especially those along a water body, a lake or a river, getting a little bit of fog, and some of that fog might have been freezing fog because we were down around the freezing mark and a little bit below most locations, getting into the upper 20s this morning. High pressure will be moving in from the west, and that will help to keep us fairly mild for the end of 2011. On the upper air chart, you can see that we have a little trough moving across today. That will be relatively benign. Again, maybe a few cirrus clouds, and that will flatten. The pattern will flatten out after this, allowing us to moderate just a little bit with highs generally in the lower 60s for the weekend before we drop into the deep freeze. Temperatures across the United States, fairly mild for this time of year. The only really cold values this morning occurring across New York, Pennsylvania, and the New England states. Across central Alabama, we're not that cold really, but we are below where we typically would be in very late December. Temperatures ranging from about 25 at Gadsden to 31 at Birmingham. On the QPF, you can see the QPF is not generating much in the way of precipitation with the front planning that I expect to come through on January the 1st. That front, I think, will be essentially dry in terms of precipitation, but we might see a few spits. The GFS this morning, and primarily dealing with the GFS from the 06Z run, but also the European will be mentioned a few times with a few graphics to illustrate how they're in pretty good agreement. But there's today, high pressure moving in, and basically the main feature in our pattern. We do get a bit of a glancing blow at a fairly strong trough coming across the Great Lakes, closed low moving across the Great Lakes there. That moves quickly into New England, which means that on the 31st, we'll be back under a ridge, and you see the pattern has flattened out, so that's why we can forecast lower 60s for highs. That next one dives in, establishing a bit of a long wave trough position over the eastern half of the country on the 1st. And of course, with that, we will see a cold front moving through the area. The GFS suggesting that there might be a little bit of precipitation with it. Like I say, I just hate putting in, small chances all the time. It's not significant enough rain, I think, that we really need to be worried about it. When you get out to the 2nd, that trough really established with a very broad trough over the eastern half of the country, and of course a great fetch coming in from the north, and that bringing us very chilly air. The trough stays pretty much in position, moving just a little bit, but that keeps us in the cold edge of things, and you can see the 540 thickness line diving down to the Alabama-Tennessee border around the 3rd at midday, so going to be a few chilly days. Now, the European is a little bit colder. Here is the European at that same time, and you can see that the 540 line reaching Birmingham. When we get out to the 4th, we still, the main long wave is still over the East Coast. And we're getting these little disturbances. There's one over Missouri. There's another one back entering the U.S. from Canada. So we get these little reinforcing shots of cold air. So it looks like we are going to have several days of pretty cold weather to have to deal with. By the time we get to the 5th, one of those troughs has really dug in again, and this one has the potential for a little bit of mischief. Not a lot, but certainly some. The GFS suggesting the 540 line would get all the way down to Dothan, and also perhaps some wraparound moisture that would cause us to have a little bit of snow, especially over Kentucky and Tennessee, but you can see diminishing it over Alabama. Now, the European has a similar look to it, although, once again, the European's a little bit cooler. That is the 540 line, as you can see, diving down all the way to the Gulf Coast. Now, they're not that far apart. The European suggesting there wouldn't be as much moisture over Tennessee and Kentucky as what the GFS is. So the GFS a little wetter up there, the Euro a little bit drier up there, but wetter down along the Gulf Coast. That would suggests some mischief, but we are verging out there towards the end of the forecast period, so we're not going to go there just yet. But they're both suggesting fairly cold forecasts. By the time we get out to the 8th, at 252 hours. Now, we're getting out into voodoo, well out into voodoo now. The pattern has gone pretty much zonal. You can still see a bit of a long wave trough position, so we're not going to just warm up spectacularly, I don't believe, but we certainly will moderate, it appears. And then by the 11th, we're now moderated very nicely because we've got a fairly strong trough over the Rockies, and that digging into northern Mexico, bringing southwesterly flow back across the southeastern U.S., so that should put us into good weather once again. And then it looks like maybe a wet system around the 13th. Of course, even before that, with that southwesterly flow, we might have some moisture to deal with. But it does look like, out this far anyway, that there's not any kind of serious threat for any kind of winter weather at the moment. But as we say with voodoo, stay tuned. That will probably change. Well, thanks for tuning in to the Weather Xtreme video. I expect to have the next one posted Friday morning around 9 or so. In the meantime, you can catch information on the blog. And if you're local to us here in the Birmingham area, don't forget to catch my weather during the morning shifts here and the midday news programs at from 4:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. and again from 11 to noon. I'm meteorologist Brian Peters. Thanks for tuning in, and Godspeed.
Being Alabama's news leader means digging deeper to get you the facts, working harder so you have all sides of the story, and not being afraid to tell the truth. Every day you award us by making ABC 3340 Alabama's most watched news. And now the Associated Press has named us Alabama's most outstanding news operation. That's 9 times since 1996, more than all other stations combined. And that's 9 more reasons you should trust the news leader. ABC 3340.